that thought in mind, and if we don't come up with a good solution, come back with the question again. Rick?
So we've got 12 applications here. How many others are, how many beyond that are expected?
9. So we've received 9 additional projects. Mhm.
Plus, we know there's going to be at least
Exactly, exactly. And other, Greg?
We don't obviously have to use all 8 of our choices.
Actually, you do.
We do.
We do. All these projects meet federal guidelines, so they're viable projects, and they've come forward and asked for the money. Will?
I just don't want to vote yes on 8. So,
Okay.
so then the next question is when you're talking about the top vote getters, I'm assuming that means that they've all met a minimum threshold of a majority vote.
It means they are the top vote getters, Greg. What it means is that if everybody in here voted for one project, because they all thought it was a really good project, that's how many votes it will get. If it divides evenly, if we have a 12-way tie, then it will be because people split their votes up, right? So this is like putting dots. You've done the dot putting thing before. That's what this is, only electronic. So that people actually maybe are voting what they think people want or what they think makes sense, as opposed to being influenced by the number of dots they see. So, Will.
So if I could just clarify that somewhat. Obviously, it's really hard for people who are emotionally invested in different projects in each of these rounds of voting to be able to lodge an opinion. Katie had seen this done at a previous job where a dot matrix system was used to create consensus where perhaps there was none available before. So therefore, if everybody has 8 votes to allocate, that means that statistically, we will all be able to register our opinions and clearly discover which are the most popular projects each time we do this.
No, one vote, one project. So Greg, why would you not?
If there's a project, I'm not saying that I don't have 8 projects in
Okay.
here, but if I didn't, I don't think I should be forced to put my dot on a project that I don't support.
So,
And then my question is, if that was the case, then would we approve a project that potentially didn't have a majority of committee members
approved
thought
it?
we should go forward with that project, but it still was in the top 8.
So I'll tell you what, let's go through the process and see if that problem appears. If you had read all of these and you said there's only 2 I think are worthy, then we could have a discussion about, did everyone read that? Is this a problem? Do we only each have 2 votes? But I'm actually not sure we have the problem. And this isn't something that they made up. This has actually been used in Washington County as well as in Katie's job, and it seems to work. So can we give it a try? And then if we get to a point where you say, I'm only voting 6 times, that's fine. Same, Elise, same for you, okay, or anyone. And then if we obviously only have 3 people voting, right, for a project, then we have to stop and have the discussion you want to have. How's that? So I want to make sure we're solving a real problem before we spend 20 minutes on it.
And I'm just acknowledging the fact that we will be getting additional projects if we have 5 years to disperse these funds. And the projects may qualify for funds and meet the recommendations, but I might think, well, this just happens to be one of the first ones out of the gate. It might not be one of the best ones out. And so I want to reserve my recommendations for really projects that I think meet that, that bar that we discussed at the previous budget meetings, rather than be forced to select 8 projects.
You're not, no one's going to force you, Greg.
Well,
It'll be all right.
Right.
My assumption was that you would want to, that there may be more than 8 projects you want to vote for, and you're going to vote for your top 8.
Right.
So let's see if that actually happens.
Okay.
Katie?
Oh, I do want to also emphasize, there is somewhat of an urgency to delegate our funds because we have to have a budget submitted to the federal government by April. So we're already kind of behind the times with things right now. And so we're going to have some sort of an idea what projects we're going to go forward with. So we're hoping with the December budget committee meeting and February, and then hopefully March, we'll be able to have some sort of an idea with what we want to do with the funds. Now, we can probably always make amendments to the budget in the future, but we're going to have to submit some sort of project request to the federal government showing our purposes for using the money. So that's kind of why we're wanting to move forward with these processes, with the projects.
Right. So let's see how it goes. And we'll get our first round of voting. And if the problem is, as you pointed out, Greg, that people just don't think these are the right projects and they're not willing to vote for it, then we'll have that discussion. So good point. Elise, you had a. So the problem with that is, I'll point out, we've had the money since August and we've done nothing with it. And the county has had money longer and has done nothing with it. The problem is you said 5 years, Greg, it's actually 4, and it has to be done by then. So any capital projects you want to do, you know what the supply chain issues are right now. If you want to do something, you best get going on it if you want to get it done in time. So there always might be something better around the bend, but at some point we have to start. So let's give it a try. And if you feel like the things are not worthy, then only vote for the ones you are, and then we'll have a lower number of votes. And if that lower number of votes gets below a quorum, we'll have the discussion. How's that? Because I think it's a valid point.
If we have somewhere, I don't know if mathematically this will work, we have a hard to move less than 50% of the committee, that's going to be off, right?
Will?
So folks, not to belabor the point, but many, many months have gone by and we haven't dedicated any money to any projects yet. We do have a timeline here. We have designed a system that can garner votes. We do have it set to 8 votes. This is a process that will not even allocate half of the money tonight, because simply if 8 out of 12 projects are funded, it's far more likely to be $1.5 million or something like that. And we can do the process again. We can change the number of votes that can be allocated again. But when I arrived here 4 months ago, nothing had happened. And the time is going by and the clock is ticking. So that's the sense of urgency.
Elise, can you either speak up louder or take your mask off while you're talking?
I also don't want people take their mask off. I mean, that also makes me nervous. Everything going on. So, it's not our community organization or business fault that we didn't have a process in place for them to urgently simply ask. But that is my concern. I get it's strange, all of those things that I have spent money in the factory. Don't want to.
Right.
Don't support the problem.
Elise is absolutely correct. This is not anything on any of our nonprofits, community organizations, or other entities.
In our last budget committee meeting, we said something, and I don't remember the number, so you guys tell me, that we'd be willing to move ahead with like $1 million worth of projects to get it going. And knowing that we were reserving, if we'll be doing really good tonight if we actually get to that million, okay? Because all 12, I ran the total, all 12 are 2 million. Yeah, so I think we're trying to find the right balance here. And the next submissions, the next 9 are all large nonprofits. And the mom and pop stores are slower to get it done, but they're the third batch, which is one reason why if they don't make it through tonight, we want the others to be visible. So Okay, is everybody, any other questions on the process? Thank you for asking, Greg. And okay, where's our worthy runner? Yes. Ah, sorry, Bryce. Concerns with the process are we have 8 votes per person and that they may wish to not vote for 8 projects. So we're going to hold that in mind. The concern raised was if you get 3 members of a 14-person committee voting for a project, should it pass if others are abstaining? And so we'll have that discussion if we run into that problem. The other conversation was that a lot of the nonprofits and smaller businesses have not yet submitted, and partially because the city is just now, with Will's leadership and Katie's leadership, getting a process in place. So the concern was, are they being locked out while others get in early? And the answer is no, we are not submitting most of the dollars tonight. We're just getting started. And if we run into these problems when we actually get into the vote, we'll stop and we'll talk through the process and figure it out. Is that
Yep.
good?
Thank you. Sounds good. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Good to see you.
Perfect. Yes, good to see you as well. Later, once baby's done feeding, I'll bring little baby Eli up for folks to see if you want,
Okay.
in an intermission or something.
That was a requirement at the break. Excellent.
Great. Sounds good.
In the spirit of public service, Will is our runner tonight. He's bringing in each person to read their proposal.
The other thing, at least I certainly if you look at this, 3 are city, right? So chances are next time the vast majority of the nonprofits. So I think we'll just heavy on the city stuff.
Right. Okay. Mr. Rux, can you tell us about your project, please?
Good evening, Budget Committee members. I haven't seen you in a while. So the proposal before you this evening is for $70,000 of ARPA funds. The funds would be applied towards the systems development charge costs for a new 79-room Fairfield Inn Hotel, which would be located just south of Columbia Bank off of Brucher. Of course, the tourism economy took a big hit during the pandemic. We're trying to continue to climb our way out of all of that. Hospitality, tourism took probably the biggest hit statewide through this particular pandemic. We've spent about the last 6 years trying to attract new hotels into the community. Basically 2 years ago, the water spigot got shut off, but we do have one developer, Escape Lodging, who has come back to the city with a particular proposal. In your material tonight, it indicates that the SDCs that are proposed or would be required for this development are $763,740. The payback or the time that the money would be expended would be over the next 1 to 2 years. And so SDCs have to be paid at the time building permits are issued. On the sustainability component of this, provided some numbers working with Escape Lodging. In the first year, the TLT revenue that would be generated is estimated a little over $270,000. In that 10th year, it's estimated to be about $459,000, and so it continues to go up. Over a 10-year period, they would pay, we're estimating about a little over $3.6 million of transient lodging tax revenue that would come into the city. 35% of that revenue goes to tourism, marketing, and promotion activities. The balance of that, 65%, goes into the general fund. In addition, there's a minimum of about $12,000 in property taxes that would be generated by the new hotel. This is a long-term economic activity. That's one of the things many of you hear from me is this is not a short-term 1 year, 2 years. This is a 20+ year program that would continue to provide rooms for those tourists, those that come and spend a night or travel more than 50 miles to come to Newberg for different activities, agritourism, wine tasting, festivals, events, and so forth and so on. So with that, I think I will stop and see if you have, Madam Chair, any questions?
Questions from the Budget Committee? Greg? Oh, sorry, Greg, can you come up to the chair because the recording cannot hear you without. There you go.
I'm not clear on the impact of the $70,000, like the reason why it's needed, or what, is the owner not going to build a hotel unless the fees are $70,000 less, or?
The proposed developer did do a presentation to the city council back in July, sharing information about what the development costs were for this particular hotel, which the permits and SDCs were over $1 million. 763,000 of that is directly tied to system development charges. So the council over the course of the last year has heard a lot of conversations from the community about the cost of our SDCs. And so, and this proposal is a way to try to attract this economic driver for our community by reducing down by $70,000 their SDC costs. There's another component of this that was not ready at the time this material was put together, but we're also looking at using some funds out of what we call Fund 14, our Economic Development Fund, to help assist with the cost of the SDCs that then would get paid back through the transient lodging tax. So this is a way to get this developer to be able to come in and build this new 79-room hotel in Newberg. We have not been able to be successful, like I said, for the past 6+ years to attract a particular hotel. And one of those drivers is the cost of our SDCs.
So the developer then of the hotel has indicated that they're on the fence. They're not all in on this project, and they're debating this amongst themselves. And your intent is to lower the costs, the development costs by $70,000 to increase the chances that they would say yes.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Doug. Mr. Worthy. I know this one. School. Yes, yes, yes. You want to read the, or I can read. Thanks. Yep. Our school district had some issues getting someone to be here this evening. Not going to make comments about that because I've been told they're not in good taste. However, I want to read the summary of their submission. Obviously, we cannot answer questions, but we can pose questions and look to get answers. They are requesting for $200,000 for a health and wellness center at the high school. Newberg Public Schools request $200,000 to help convert a space into a health and wellness center at Newberg High School. It is a $1.4 million project. It comes from a recently passed construction bond, but due to costs related to the pandemic, the school district is looking for sources to account for the increased cost of construction. The Health and Wellness Center will increase mental and physical health services available to the students. So that's the quick summary. You have the more detail. Do we have any questions from the Budget Committee? Rick?
I guess just a question that if we do ask the school district is, how much ARPA money they receive directly? I'd like to know. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
We are aware that the school has received approximately $7 million of emergency rescue funding from different pools, but I don't know any details about that.
Other questions? Excellent. Okay. We will not be here till midnight. Okay. Will, essential city staff member.
Yes. Thanks, folks, and please forgive me, and I've got the Scottish accent and a mask on, which is kind of like the double whammy. So, good evening, honourable councillors and members of the community. I'm speaking today not for myself, but on behalf of the essential workers of the City of Newberg. I promised them I would do so, and I told the rank and file employees that I would be doing this evening. First, to give you some context, the essential worker tag means that the employee in question has a special sort of job description. It means that they have to come to work regardless of the weather, natural disaster, logistics disruptions, or even risk to their own life and limb. Few of us face such a daunting responsibility built into our job descriptions. And yet, over 100 of our 155 staff have this burden to shoulder, and it impacts their families, children, and loved ones. Most residents can choose not to go to work if things look especially bad, at least for a short time. Not so our essential workers. These workers in public works operations, public works maintenance, and police patrol are obliged to come to work to keep our sewers running, our water drinkable, our roads open, and our streets safe. For them, a no-show is simply not an option. Now, I would like to direct the minds of the committee to the dark and fearful days of March, April, and May of 2020. No one knew much about what COVID was going to do. Nobody knew the morbidity rates and the transmissibility of the new disease, and everybody was living in fear. While white-collar workers like myself had the luxury to conduct telework or modified work assignments to keep ourselves and our families safe, our essential workers had no such latitude. They had to come in each and every day, and this was before COVID safety protocols were even fully figured out. They were exposed to a huge risk. Many became sick, and in other communities, some even died. The federal ARPA guidance code 1.9 and 4.1 clearly sets forth that cities and counties can reward essential workers for their bravery. Other neighbouring communities such as Tualatin have already enacted ARPA spending of this sort, and I would propose that we should do the same. The modest amount of this proposal would allow each essential worker to receive a $2,500 payment as a thank you for their commitment to the city and their personal bravery in that dark time. Naturally, this will also have an automatic stimulating effect on the local economy. Lastly, I will leave the committee with this thought. As we fight to retain our staff in the most volatile job market that the US has seen since the Second World War, should we consider insulting these essential workers by not recognizing them as our neighbouring communities have done? I say no. And I ask the committee to do the right thing by these rank and file workers. At this juncture, I would be delighted to take questions from the Budget Committee.
Bryce, make sure you make a lot of noise if you want to, because I'll forget to ask you.
Yes, will do.
Thank you, Bryce. Any, no questions?
Thank you kindly.
Okay. Katie.
Hey, good evening, Budget Committee members. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Katie Strode, and I'm the City Finance Manager. I am here to present to you on behalf of the City and the Finance Department for a request for a new citywide financial software system. Just to give you some background, Newberg uses Springbrook for their financial software, which was originally designed and created for us in 1985, and Newberg was their very first customer. However, as we all know, technology has rapidly changed over the last 30+ years, and Newberg has made very little investment into updating this software. We upgraded a module in 2010, which was the last upgrade we have done. The city currently does not utilize many of the modules offered by Springbrook because it would be very costly to upgrade. And oftentimes when we call for technical support, they tell us they cannot help us because we are using an unsupported version. This has become a hindrance to our workflow and our abilities to do our jobs efficiently. For those of you who don't know my background, I worked as a municipal auditor for over 10 years and have audited many cities across the state, performing financial audits, recommending improvements to internal controls, and working with financial softwares to identify weaknesses and potentials for fraud. Let me share some of the main issues I've discovered with Newberg's financial software setup. Newberg currently does not pay for the bank reconciliation module, which means we must reconcile cash completely outside of the general ledger and financial software. Cash is entirely reconciled in Excel, and a manual journal entry is performed to enter cash balances every month. This is a huge weakness that opens the city up for misappropriation of assets. Our court system is run on an entirely different financial platform called Hvhc. All court fines and fees are entered and deposited into this outside system, and manual journal entries must be made daily into Springbrook. During my time as an auditor, when I encountered fraud, it was instances where a separate financial platform was being used. This puts Newberg at a much greater risk for fraudulent financial reporting. Newberg is currently using a payroll module from Springbrook that is almost 20 years outdated, which means we must manually enter everything payroll related, including all payroll taxes and benefits, which should be updated automatically by the software. This takes significant staff time each month to ensure employees are being paid correctly. Lastly, one of the largest risks for any governmental entity is segregation of duties. We do not want one employee to have access to everything. Being able to segregate access in a financial software is key to preventing fraud and misappropriation of assets. However, Springbrook does not allow for proper segregation between modules such as payroll and HR. This allows staff to have access they shouldn't, making it difficult to monitor. I share these risks with you as they have been shared with previous management by the auditors, but they have not been escalated to a council action due to our compensating controls. This essentially means that staff has to perform extra work to ensure accuracy since Springbrook does not have adequate controls in place. By implementing a new financial software, we will save countless staff hours by reducing the amount of extra work needed in order to compensate for an outdated system with little to no internal controls. When the pandemic hit in 2020 and the city was forced to pivot to remote work, it became blatantly obvious that Springbrook did not have the capabilities to do so. Springbrook does not have the abilities to pay for vendors via ACH, which is oftentimes the preferred method of payment. This required staff to come into the office to cut vendor checks weekly. Purchase orders were another issue during the pandemic because all of those are signed and generated via paper instead of electronically. Additionally, payroll cannot be completed remotely because personnel action forms are completed and signed via paper, and the city also utilizes paper timesheets which have to be hand entered and imported instead of done electronically. Today, Will and I were able to meet with a potential software vendor, and Will drove a hard bargain to ensure that we can stick to this asking price. The vendor gave us a rough quote of $400,000 to get the city up to speed, which is what I'd like to amend my asking price to tonight. A new financial software benefits not only the city, but also the community it serves. A new software we are looking at will be able to replace many silo programs the city has in place, which will result in approximately $40,000 of savings per year. The new software will also provide many functionalities to citizens, such as the ability to pay a water bill, court fine, or building permit on their cell phones. Investing these ARPA funds into our city will help provide better overall financial transparency and help deliver a better ability to budget funds and forecast the financial future. And with that, I will take any questions.
Elise?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually super fun because we get to hear about all these different things we don't know about. So my first question really is just about, the intention of ARPA and how you see this really, the integrity of the intention of ARPA. And in my opinion, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but this feels very much like an operational cost that needs to be done through our regular city budget. But if I could be swayed, if you could explain your feelings of the intention of ARPA and how you feel like I totally heard, working from home, constraints around cutting of checks, all those things. I would also entertain some sort of similar creativity that Mr. Rux displayed of a patchwork of some ARPA dollars to then go to resolution to council to fund the rest through an amendment to the current budget.
Yeah, and I think in my white paper, I mentioned all of the revenue loss that the city has incurred, which is one of the expenditure codes that you can use for claiming ARPA funds. So it was roughly about 2.9 million that we've lost in 2020 for, correct. Yes. Yeah, so it was all with loss of building permits and franchise fees and interest revenue and we have over 300,000 in outstanding utility bills that we're unable to collect on because we were not doing water shutoffs. And, that's just undeemable money for us. And then, just to keep things going because we were required to buy PP&E and different sort of things for COVID and more electronic stuff for working from home. We had to, absorb a lot of that cost in our general fund, which really reduced our general fund cost about $1 million. So just the overall financial impact that COVID really had on the city was, almost $3 million in 2020. I don't think it would have been as significant. During 2020, we had to have furloughed some staff. And I think if we had had a software where we could better project our ending fund balances and our budget costs, I don't know that that would have been necessary. It's just that we have to use all these separate silos in Excel in order to kind of get what we need to get instead of having a proper financial tool that will do that for us.
I know. It's just so you get your steps,
Is this the time where we do have that discussion about, I just am super uncomfortable with what I feel like is our operational responsibility as a council to the city versus like what we've neglected over time. And I know we can't fix everything, but what we've neglected over time versus what is true COVID recovery money for businesses, organizations.
And I will again argue with that a lot of our general fund reserve money we've had to put into COVID recovery versus we don't have the reserves now to buy something like this for the city. It's going to take several years for us to build up that $1 million reserve again that we had to put out.
Guess I still struggle a little bit with in full transparency, just the integrity of the process with knowing that other really suffering businesses and organizations may not have front door access to understanding ARPA, and that the city of Newberg counties very well do understand. The people in our packet have a front seat to those conversations very clearly. So I just would want to protect the integrity of that. So that's where I'm struggling. But I do totally agree that you need that.
Thank you, Lise. Rick? And then Stephanie.
I think, maybe this is more blunt than Katie is. Katie's more diplomatic than I am, but I think the ARPA guidelines from what we see in the codes and all are actually pretty broad. This is, clear. The only other thing, and I'm testifying, I don't mean to testify, I'll get to a question at some point, but a one-time expenditure for this kind of thing that clearly has not been spent in 10 years or more. We don't have this one-time money all the time. So, and I think also that there is a notion that a certain amount of this money, of all of this ARPA money, would go to city projects. That was a part of the deal. But so is that true? I guess I can go through all that and say, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then the only other thing is also a comment is that shaving $90,000 off of this, $91,000.
Yes.
By your conversation today, kudos to you two for that. That's well done.
That was all Will.
It was well. Stephanie, please.
I have a few questions, but they're all related. So this new vendor that you're talking about, is that a vendor that you are familiar with? And is there do you feel like you've had enough research to know that this is the best vendor for us? Or are there maybe vendors out there, like, are we gonna get stuck in a Springbrook kind of situation again? And should we be shopping around a little bit more to make sure that this is the best vendor for us? And then if we do tonight designate this money for this project, are we locked into that vendor if tomorrow you find out there's a new vendor that's better, or there's software that looks better for us? So what's the flexibility around that?
Yeah, so we're not locked into that vendor at all. So we just have that option to use like a state contract. So we could just directly go with them, or we can go out for an RFP. I mean, and since day one that I've been here, this was something that I was hired to potentially do. And I've worked with lots of different softwares over the years, just from my experience. And I've done a lot of research since I've been here to see which ones specifically would be good for Newberg. And this one that we looked at today was probably the best. And most of our neighboring cities, like Tigard and I think Sherwood and maybe McMinnville is moving to it, but that seems to be the consensus, that most people are moving away from Springbrook into this one. But I mean, absolutely more research can be done for that, and we're not committed to it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Jose?
So as an accountant myself, I understand exactly everything that you are talking about. And I know in a pandemic, the businesses and organizations that was up to speed with technology were able to pivot very fast, and they were able to have the financial reporting that was due at a drop of a dime. So kudos to you. My only concern about this is, as technology changes, will this software be able to do all the things that technology is capable of? Because we have moved away from paper, everything. So I was almost shocked that this is happening. But technology is changing, and we're getting some of these apps that automatically do the paper management. So as we use this technology, will we be losing people in the finance team because technology sometimes reduces headcount?
So right now finance staff is very at capacity with our workload. And so this would really bring the workload down to a manageable level for everybody. And that's kind of the hope. And just to make things more efficiently run at the city. I mean, especially with our purchase orders, I mean, the departments get very frustrated with, you know, the time lag and stuff. So it just would be a lot better, especially for customers wanting to pay their utility bills. Everything is just all in one integrated system versus our separate silo systems that we're using and paying for. Instead of
technology, will it be able to keep up with all the changing of technology?
Yes, that was
we're eliminating data entry.
Yes, that was something that was built in with most of the programs now. They offer automatic upgrades for no additional yearly maintenance cost. Because right now we pay a yearly maintenance cost for Springbrook, and they won't do any sort of module
And it's
upgrades for us.
Thank you, Lizelle. Other questions? Great. And how are we on time?
33 seconds.
It's all right. We'll
All right,
extend a little
33
bit.
seconds.
No, you got it. You got it great.
Yeah, we'll send a little.
So my concerns really echo exactly what Elise was saying in terms of, this seems like it's been a problem brewing since 1995 maybe. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, the reduced revenues and those things really do open the door to using ARPA funds to fund something like this. And so I understand that as well. Is there a method here to approve, say, a less amount, so that the city could then say maybe budget $200,000 versus, you know, $200,000 coming from ARPA? How might we handle approving the project but at a lower amount? And then the other piece is this $400,000 to be paid tomorrow? Or is this a period of years? Like how much money might be required in 2021, 2022? You know, that piece as well, because it could give us some time to do some budgeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, meeting with, like I said, we only met with one vendor and that was the one I was most interested in, just because I know of all the functionalities that it has to offer that would work for Newberg. And, you know, we're still working with the implementation timeline. Ideally, we would like to have this implemented by July 1. For them, that may or may not be completely possible, but we're, you know, Will's a good bargainer, so we might be able to get that done. So if it's done by July 1, then all of that will be due by July 1.
Greg, I have a question for you, if you don't mind coming back up, because I need a clarification. If we only fund part of any of these projects, that are city projects, because this is budget committee, it's different for something that's outside the city. Is this budget committee committing to taking that money from something else in the budget and putting it here? Because we all went through the budget process and there isn't hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around. So I just want to be very clear.
Well, I would say to that, that then the city would forfeit the ARPA funds if they weren't able to come up with the other $200,000. And it's not dissimilar from what we heard from Rux, where we've got somebody who is on the fence. They haven't committed to the hotel, and we are putting $70,000 into their kitty to entice them to do it. If that doesn't entice them, then that money isn't to be utilized at all, I'm assuming.
I agree entirely with what you said, but the difference here would be, this is the budget committee. It's not the city having to find 200,000. We would have to see a path to doing this. So I'm a little leery of doing this. You can probably, yes, but the question I have is, since we've lost almost $3 million this year in revenue, asking the city to come up with 200,000 feels a little bit like wishful thinking. And I'm sorry if that seems offensive. I don't mean it to be, but I need to see a path if we're going to do this, or vote no and say, find another way to do it. Either one is okay. But I'm a little, say come back with a lower amount asked for. But there has to be some reason that you're not wanting to use the ARPA funds for this, or
Well, there
see a
is,
path?
for sure,
Okay.
because this has been all the issues that Elise stated are my
Okay.
issues too. The front end on the city, this has been a long-term project. The city should have been funding this for years and years and years. We just went through this pandemic, or are going through it still. And clearly there's a reason to add this additional resilience to the city and strength and all those kinds of things. I get
Right.
that. I'm just not convinced that the entire amount should come from ARPA, and that quite frankly, it seems like a system critical objective for the city to accomplish. And as a budget committee member, I know, knowing this presentation, I'm really would be looking for that presentation. And I think in the context of the entire budget, we would have discussions about priorities, and that seems to be appropriate to me.
Okay, so your path to funding, I just wanted to clarify the process. So your path to funding would be the budget committee would meet and do a supplemental budget. And that was Elise's, that's the mechanism to come up with the rest. That would be our commitment to at least have that meeting and discuss it. Is that it? You can't fund half a project because it's like voting no on it. Or you can fund half of it and say, the budget committee will work on getting the other half. That's valid. I just am trying to see a path. Otherwise, we take the money and we sit it on the shelf and nothing happens. And I'm here, part of my job is to pressure us.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's a question. I'm not making a demand or anything. I'm saying, is there a way to do less than the total amount where the city might be able to come in later? And your answer is no.
Well, no, my answer is we are the mechanism. The budget committee is the mechanism so you talk about the city like it's someone else, but it's us. So we have the ability to come in and say, this is the process we would use if that's your proposal. I just wanted to be clear on how we would implement that. And I think Mike has a question. Thank
Okay.
you, Greg. Or a comment, or whatever you have, Mike.
So my opinion, from a business standpoint, I mean, this makes absolute sense. Guys, we might have missed some opportunities in the past to maybe budget correctly. I think we did this last year, and I spoke up against some budget items that we went ahead and spent money on. There was no big heartburn to do this, and this is absolutely, in my opinion, necessary for a company to function on good economic principles. For us not to even consider this or to split it in half, I understand where Greg's coming from, but we cannot, this is a gift. From this point forward, we use a little more common sense and wisdom at the budget table. We need to do this. Kudos to you for getting the money down a little bit. I don't care if it was 491,000. I've heard for years and years that we needed to do something like this a long time ago. Guys, let's step up to the table and let's just do it. And let's get this city up and running financially on a much stronger platform.
Thanks, Mike. Rick? And how are we doing?
We're over, but.
Okay. Unless someone's got a burning desire, this is the last one so that we can keep
Yeah,
moving.
I just like, back to what Greg was saying, just in the interest of complete sort of transparency for not only this group of projects, but the next groups, I don't think we should be paring down any of the requests because these are the actual requests presented. Now, we could go back to someone and say, listen, you didn't get voted through this time. Maybe if you shave it a little bit, you think you take some from the budget, that'd be fine, but I'd put it back to whoever's requesting it and not make the decision ourselves.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right. Thank you, Katie. Spirited discussion, excellent. And our worthy runner will bring in the next speaker. So glad his name is Worthy. I know. Good job. Yeah.
Okay, great. My name is Laverne Pitts. I'm the Development Director for Yamhill Community Action Partnership. And I want to say thank you so much for having me tonight to present and answer your questions at the end of this evening. The proposal you have in front of you is to answer the question that I often hear. What do I say to somebody who is homeless about where to go? I've been doing presentations over the last few months to a lot of different groups, and universally, that's the question I get. Where am I supposed to tell somebody to go? Now, in the past, what we've done is we've been telling people to hand out these cards so they can connect with us online or on the phone. But as you know, a lot of individuals who are homeless don't necessarily have great access to phones or online resources. So over the years, what we've really been wanting and needing in this county is a navigation center. And a navigation center is a location where basically you can tell people where to go. You can say, go to this address. There's a day center that will be fully staffed. There will also be shelter beds that will be located at the navigation center. We'll have partners like Provoking Hope, Providence, other partners that are also located at that navigation center. And the best part is it's currently being built using funds that were dedicated by the state of Oregon for $1.5 million in McMinnville, utilizing 2 shelters that were already
being used by YCAP. So it's already in a location that was shelter services. It's just now adding a navigation component and building out that area. There were two shelters that were situated side by side. So what we're asking for is assistance in terms of the operation of those shelters. We have already asked the city of McMinnville, and they are providing $500,000 towards this effort. We're also going to be asking Yamhill County. And so we are asking the city of Newberg to coordinate with us and combine efforts to make sure that this navigation center can be staffed 24/7 by case managers, outreach workers, and provide the necessary support needed for individuals who are homeless in our community to move up that ladder to stability. Ask is we know some people can't necessarily make it to McMinnville. We know that their families might be in Newberg, their doctors might be in Newberg, their jobs might be in Newberg. One of the programs that we have utilized successfully is our motel shelter project. The motel shelter project had motel rooms both in Newberg as well as in McMinnville. We originally had hoped to transition that to a project turnkey in Newberg. Unfortunately, none of the motels were able to be sold for the price that we were able to pay through the funding that we received from Project Turnkey. But we want to continue having motel shelter beds available in Newberg. We have out of the cold funding that we've committed to this that will last until about April, May, June, somewhere in that timeframe. So this funding will help bridge that gap so that we're not turning people out back onto the streets who've been in a motel, that we can continue that until we get our next round for out of the cold funding, which will come in then for the fall of 2022. So it will help bridge those summer months when we don't have funding to cover those beds. The motel shelter project has been extremely successful. Over 75% of the people who have gone through that project have moved into permanent housing. And in addition to that, we have over 220 individuals and 40 children that have moved from homelessness into housing through the motel shelter project. So that is the request that is before you from YCAP. And I am available to answer any questions.
Any questions? Elise?
Hello, good to see you. Question would be, I'm obviously very much in support of this, but question would be, if you foresee, so first for the navigation center, if you foresee YCAP operating that long-term, if you have the staffing to be able to do so long-term. Second question would be, super hard not having navigation center in Newberg. I know that and I'm honestly just kind of sick of having this conversation with McMinnville, with being the seat of the county, specifically around houselessness and mental health. I feel like we've made not a lot of progress in the last 5 years in this with community organizations. So the $150,000 for the continued for out of the cold motel beds doesn't address that. So what would you look to do, partner with different organizations to have some sort of similar style? Currently, Newberg is pulling a lot of houseless individuals from McMinnville because of the lack of congregate shelter options. So I do feel like we are actually becoming more of the space in our community, in our county, that is actually supporting Low Barrier. So it feels not totally in touch, I guess, to have the navigation center primarily in McMinnville.
Part of the issue that we ran into was the state funding required that the navigation center be operational by June 30th of 2022. So building a brand new facility was not really an option. Purchasing a facility, given the prices in Newberg, were just not really an option. So that's the reason why it was situated in McMinnville, is because it's the most cost-effective way for us to get a solid navigation center up and running, because we already had the two shelters sitting side by side. That's in an area where people are not going to complain because there's already been shelters in that area. So you're not going to see a lot of opposition, which is also can be a barrier to creating a navigation center. The navigation center is located near the transit center in McMinnville. So it is within, less than a mile
so it's easy walking distance. It's right, all you have to do is get off there, walk down Second Street, and it's literally like right there at the corner at Adams and Second. It's like maybe just around the corner a little bit. So, I mean, it's a really close location to the transit center. So it is for the county. It is meant for the county. It's meant for the entire county. So it is an opportunity for if you have individuals who are in Newberg, it is a place that they can reach those resources that are available countywide. We really wanted Project Turnkey in Newberg. Believe me, we went months trying to get Project Turnkey in Newberg. But it just wasn't feasible. There wasn't a motel that we could buy for the amount. But we do know that Providence is looking long-term at doing some more supportive housing in Newberg. And we're going to be working closely with them on that. So we're trying to address those needs, given the parameters that we're having to work under. If we'd had a longer time frame with the state funding, we might have been able to do more in the Newberg area, but given the short turnaround, we're going to be pushing it, even with our 2 facilities already there to be able to meet their deadline.
Yeah, I think this is going to be to piggyback a little bit on what Elise said. Just so you know, it is a challenge not having facilities here, but I think we have partners here that could help with this potentially. The Second Street Community Church Drop-In Center on First Street. They certainly probably have the capacity. We've got a shelter now up on College if there's a certain amount of capacity there, and we have Love Inc. So I think that there are possibilities here if we explore them a little more deeply. It's hard. I had somebody come into my office today who's homeless, who's looking for a place for anything. And it's hard, and namely if I have to say, well, go to McMinnville. That gets more difficult. So again, I'm just echoing what Elise said. I think it's a conversation I'd love to have that I think we all would to develop that a little bit. So thank you.
And I agree. I think there needs to be more coordination of effort with the Newberg resources that are already available. I believe there's been a lot of progress made on that front in terms of the shelter in Newberg and trying to expand the work there that we've had. So we're continuing, we're committed to that. Part of it is making sure that it's not purely a volunteer effort, that there's actually paid staff associated with this. Volunteer efforts are wonderful as supplemental, but if you really want to make sure that a facility can be open 24/7 and available all the time, you really need to have the paid staff on site to be able to do that. So that's a big part of our commitment, is trying to make sure we have the paid staff.
Yeah, we know. If there aren't any other questions, I'll ask one. Oh, Bryce, please.
No worries. Thank you for presenting. Was curious, you'd mentioned that the timeline wouldn't work to build one by June. That makes sense. And then also like purchasing one or entering into a lease agreement or something also didn't seem feasible. I was curious if you had an idea of what that estimate would look like to try to establish something physically in Newberg.
Well, the issue is we were given $1.5 million and a timeline of it had to be operational by June 30th of 2022. So even with our current facility, we're going to really be pushing that timeline. So to locate a piece of land, because we weren't told until, I think it was like October, that we even had the funding. So, I mean, it's been a very compressed timeline in trying to get this up and running. So there were a few different locations that were looked at, and all of them, the timeline was just too long to get it up and operational. So that was why it was finally decided just to move forward with the land that we already had, the buildings we already had, and then to really create that bridge between those 2 buildings that would be the actual navigation center aspect, because that could actually get built in the timeline we were dealing with. Unfortunately, we're also dealing with the same problems everybody else is in terms of timelines for goods, products, things of that coming into the area. Construction projects are taking significantly longer than what they normally do. Staffing is an issue in terms of the number of hiring staff. So there's a lot of barriers right now to, if you're trying to look outside of something that you already have your hands on, to be able to make it work. And our goal is to make sure we can make this work for individuals who are homeless in Yamhill County. So that's our focus, is trying to make sure we meet that deadline.
Gotcha. That makes sense. If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like, in your opinion, there's absolutely no way to meet the June deadline and establish something here in Newberg, or to work with a local community partner to establish something. Is that correct?
Well, the issue is we already have had to make those decisions, like at the very beginning of all this process. So this is the process where we already have the
answer is
budgets
yes,
created.
there is
We're
no
already,
way.
huh?
So the answer is yes, there is no way.
There really is not a way.
That's.
Yeah,
what
at
he
this
was
point, there
asking.
really isn't a way. There wasn't even really a way 2
Gotcha.
months ago, and that's what the determination by the committee who worked on this 2 months ago made that determination, that there wasn't a way to do it, even with a facility in Newberg that we didn't already own. That in order
Gotcha.
to buy a facility, retrofit it, do all that, it just wasn't possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Elise?
Yeah.
My understanding is also that this is an ask of every city with their ARPA funds,
Correct.
right? Right. So this is, I do want to make that clear.
This is a
for everyone.
countywide ask.
No, I know. I'm just saying for Bryce too on the phone, that that would be another reason we can't move the navigation centers, because you have collected ARPA funds from different cities based on it being in McMinnville.
Correct. Yeah, we've already done an ask to McMinnville based on it being in McMinnville.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that ask was for $500,000.
Okay, and I have a question. I always have to wait till the end though. So are any other questions? Okay, you mentioned that Providence is working on some things. You're working with Providence. The issue that you weren't here during the rest of it, but part of the issue is people want to make sure that we put money where we want it. So if there is a homeless proposal coming from Providence that you're working on them with.
We work with Providence on Project Turnkey,
Okay,
which is where some of the individuals who are moving through the navigation center could then end up being housed into Project Turnkey.
which is
So
really-
we have there's a system that's going to be set up there where if they come into the navigation center, we work with them in the navigation center, which is a very low barrier shelter, is the navigation center. The turnkey program is not quite as low barrier as the navigation center, but we currently have beds that we can then move people from the navigation center then into the turnkey program, which is again, just kind of right down the street. So it creates a process for us to move people from homelessness into housing by having these two entities work in tandem. And so that's where I kind of wanted to bring in the fact that we have Providence working with us on the turnkey side of it. But that we had worked really hard to try and get that one in Newberg. So just that you're aware that this was not a decision made lightly in terms of the placement of the location for either one of these, but we're not asking for Project Turnkey money here. I just wanted you to be aware of that other resource and the fact that we were very aware of the desire to have it here.
Okay. And
So-
the other question, just to clarify, these are operational funds, not funds for building the
Correct.
navigation center?
Correct.
So how will you stay in business after these ARPA funds are gone?
One of the things that we are also in the process of, we are in the process of asking for Measure 110 funding. So that is for individuals that with substance use disorder.
Mhm.
So the idea will be potentially down the road, as more and more of those funds become available, that we can solicit those funds as well as other state funds to be able to support the ongoing efforts at this location. So we do have a longer term funding plan for it, but what we really need right now is we want a solid 3-year commitment to it so we can hire people and give them a solid, we have funding for 3 years, we're good, because we're not quite sure when all of that Measure 110 funding is actually, I mean, I know the applications are happening right now. We're involved with one of those, but we're not quite sure the timing of all that and how much is going to actually get dispersed, who's going to get what. So it's very up in the air at the moment, and that's for this biennium. Hopefully, once we get that information from this biennium, that'll help us for those future, to be able to know how much we can ask.
Okay, and then the last question, the 150,000 is for motel beds in Newberg for Newberg homeless?
Correct. For
Four
4 beds. Well, for 4 rooms.
4 rooms.
4 rooms. So sometimes those are families in those rooms. Sometimes they're individuals, it depends. But yeah, it's for that. So we've already committed, I think it's over 200,000 of our out of the cold funding into Newberg for those motel beds during this time period, from now until when that funding runs out. Because we do have the turnkey program in McMinnville. So we committed our out of the cold funding into Newberg.
Thank you.
Try and balance that out.
Lisa.
So I just want to be like, I'm not trying to plead my case to the council or the budget committee, but I just want to be clear that this is super important for houselessness in our community, and it doesn't solve houselessness.
Right.
So this is really continuation of a program that's existing and then supporting of navigating through the county. But that doesn't solve the people that are currently at the shelter or unplaced. So super supportive. And to your question about if there are other organizations, I will imagine that there are other organizations coming to talk to us about houselessness. And $350,000 sitting in here seems like a ton of money. And sadly, and in this world, it's not very much money. So
Yeah.
thank
It
you.
doesn't go very far, does it? No. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, the amount of funding that it would take to truly address houselessness in Yamhill County is more than all the ARPA funds that have been distributed in Yamhill County.
Okay.
So we, that's just me being completely honest on that front. So what we're trying to do is establish some structures in place though, so that we can address those questions of where am I supposed to go? And there's one place that everybody knows there that they can go and get those resources.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
By the way, if anybody would like any of these, we would love to hand these out more to businesses in your community so that they can address, direct people and so forth. So I'm going to give these to you so that people can have those. And if you ever have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, William.
Hello, I'm Dave Brooks. I'm the Public Safety Technology Manager, and this is Chief Kosmicki. So we're going to talk about a request for $40,000 for equipment for the forensics lab. Our computer forensics lab uses customized, powerful computers as the main tool to acquire and process digital evidence. A typical investigation will have multiple devices submitted, adding up to terabytes of data that we process for each case. So these workstations are, they have very specialized equipment and they have to be very powerful. Our goal is to limit the trauma to victims as much as possible. Digital evidence is a deciding factor in not only resolving cases quickly, the evidence is so damning that almost all cases result in the defendant pleading guilty instead of going to court. This spares the victims, especially children, the trauma of having to testify in court. An example of this is a case that started out as a search warrant related to illegal substances. The suspect's computer and phone revealed he was, in addition to the drug crimes that he was committing, he was giving a child drugs. He was sexually abusing this child. He was taking photos and videos of the child and arranging for sexual encounters between the child and other adults. In this case, the suspect, when faced with the digital evidence, he pled guilty and is serving a sentence with a minimum of 37 years in prison. The interesting case with this is without the digital forensics component, he most likely would have pled guilty to some sort of a drug crime that would likely result in just probation, and we would have never known about the child being abused. Another example of a case we had is in 2008, a young man was shot and killed in our city. The victim was unknown to officers. His family lived far away. We didn't have any witnesses. We didn't have any video. Really no investigative leads at that point, but he did have a cell phone on him. Our forensic unit bypassed the security on this phone, got into it, and we found a text message conversation with somebody using just an alias, so we didn't have their actual name. But this text message conversation ended right before the suspect or the victim was shot and killed. During part of this conversation, they were referencing a gun buy the day before in another city, and that deal had gone bad, and it resulted in a shooting in that city. We contacted that city. We found that they had an incident at a hotel where there was shots fired, and they had recovered a cell phone at the scene, and it was now located in their evidence. We got a hold of that phone, got into the phone, and the information we found identified the suspect, and it identified other individuals involved in the crime, and the information we found in the phone led to the suspect being arrested, and then he was later convicted of murder. Another case we had shows that forensic evidence really gets to the truth of the matter. We had one person that was accusing another person of serious crimes, and they had evidence to back it up in the form of a video that they had provided. We got a hold of the phone that produced that video, and through a forensic analysis, we learned that the person accusing the other person that had the video, they altered the audio track of that video to make it look like it was something else that corroborated their version of what happened. When in fact, the original version of the video that we found actually exonerated the person that was accused. And probably for that reason, that person is not in prison today. So that's some examples of the impact we have on the community. And on behalf of the victims that we serve, especially children, I urge you to vote yes for this proposal.
Just to be clear, does everyone know what the forensics workstation is? It's not something you construct. They're really, really powerful computers. Sometimes it gets lost. We forget to say exactly what it is. Russ even asked me today, do you need help building that forensic workstation?
Chief,
No.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Did everyone hear me?
It's not in here. It's the
Recording?
came
Okay.
for you. Yeah.
I just
sorry.
wanted to clarify that the forensic workstation is actually a very powerful computer. It's not something that you construct or build or a piece of furniture or anything like that. Sometimes we forget to mention that. So I just want to make sure everyone knew.
Questions from the committee? Solomon.
I guess I'm curious, what you have this workstations already, looking to replace them. What limitations are there with currently what we have? And would it not possibly be better to wait until those cost on chips and computer related things go down, which that's the assumption that they will eventually?
So the machines we have right now are making it so it takes us a lot of time to complete these cases. I'll talk about a case that came into the lab last Friday. It's the total amount of data is 18 terabytes in it. We started acquiring that evidence, and it didn't finish until late Monday. And then once it's acquired, then you have to process it. And it's been processing from Monday, and it's still going, and it's probably done in 2 more days. So that's one case that came in. And the caseload in the lab is probably, I would say an average caseload is 15 cases at any time.
Solomon. Sorry, just stay put till you're done. There you go.
What would the expectation of time be with the new workstation?
Oh, it would be much faster, but you know, I always have said computers age in dog years, right? So 1 year is 7 years. We're seeing computers come in that are more powerful that we have to process than the ones we have now. I had a phone that came in on a time sensitive case that had 850,000 files in it. And it took 10 hours to, and I say like, it was time sensitive, like we had the district attorney calling, is it done yet? Is it done yet? So it took 10 hours to process that and another 10 hours to acquire it and another 24 hours to process it. So they're just not keeping up. They don't have enough resources and they don't have enough storage to even store the cases.
Anybody who uses workstations, rarely do they keep them more than 2 years, let alone 5. I'm amazed at how cost-effective IT is here. How's that? Yeah, 5 years is like a lifetime for a workstation. Stephanie.
Seems weird to walk away from you to ask a question. Do other cities have this same capability?
Not every city, but I would say that this is becoming probably one of the big things that law enforcement needs. For example, like that video. If we didn't have a forensic capability, I'm worried that, you know, you're going to have to take that evidence at face value.
So I have a follow-up question. Outside of the manpower that it would create, could we sell our services to other cities? Like, is this a way to generate any sort of revenue? Like if McMinnville called up and was like, hey, can we charge them for that?
I'll let the chief take that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We currently have a contract with McMinnville, the sheriff's office. We do some work for some smaller agencies that can't afford it. But, you know, obviously their caseload's not as large as ours, so we do give back. We've increased our budget from about $15,000 to $57,000. We get money from CAMI funds, which is child abuse, because, you know, I mean, as you guys know, there's almost every single crime involves a computer, and it can be. So to answer your question, yes, we already do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to belabor it. Yes.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next. And I think we'll take a break once we get through these, which are all from public safety. So the next two, and then we'll offer a break if people need it.
All right, this is our body worn camera project. Okay, the funding for this 88,560 is projected to fund the first year of our body worn camera implementation. And I do want to say that body worn cameras is a priority for Newberg Dundee Police, the city administration, and the residents that we serve. We've gotten a lot of feedback saying this is something that we really want and need. I know the police department has been wanting to get these for several years, and the funding has been the hurdle. Having a video and audio recording of interactions with the public increases transparency and accountability, and that's something that we want to bring to the residents. Our officers are in support of this project. We have applied for a grant back in July. It's a federal grant, and we're waiting to find out if we get awarded that grant. If we do, it'll be a 50% matching grant. We develop policies. Policies are at a stage now that they're not vendor specific, so they govern the use, but they don't get into the finer details of that will come when we have a vendor selected, then we will refine that policy a bit. And actually tomorrow, we're starting our third vendor evaluation. We've evaluated 2 vendors already. And so we've had a small amount of officers with body worn cameras for a couple months now. The 3 officers participating in the evaluations are reporting that interactions with the public are more positive, and it's proving to be a good de-escalation tool. At the completion of the trial, we're going to be in a position to start the RFP process, and hopefully with funding to be able to implement the cameras.
Okay, questions from the committee? Rick?
All right, I think at one point, if I recall correctly, there's the cost of the actual equipment itself, which is this, right? And then wasn't there also a certain amount of personnel that was going to be needed in order to do whatever you have to do once you have all these filmed? And how's that going to work out?
We're evaluating the total cost of ownership of the program. And one of our priorities is to reduce or eliminate the cost or the need for additional personnel, but it is a major concern. So we're spending a lot of time looking at what happens after we create the content. Because we have to keep it for a certain amount of time by law, and then we have to, the privacy laws don't change, so we still have to blur faces, blur identifications, any sort of HIPAA information, anything like that. So that's where a lot of the work comes in, and we're putting a lot of effort into making sure that we have the right software that automates that as much as possible.
Okay, I've been told if I ask a question, I can't look at you, I have to look at the microphone. So sorry, apologies. When will you know if you get the grant? December 31st?
Yeah, we should be days out.
And that date's changed a couple
Yeah.
times too.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We run into this on some of them, just so you understand what that question was, where if we give money, but you don't get the grant, you won't be able to use the money. So we're trying to figure out how to deal with the people trying to build the whole program.
We would still be able to use the money. The grant does not cover the entire cost. So
you would be able to move
we would
forward.
still be able to use that money.
Okay. Ready? Okay, on to the next.
All right. This is $7,000 to purchase a drone. Specifically, what we would be funding is a DJI Mavic 2 drone. This drone has onboard video recording, and it has both day and night cameras. One of the areas we would use a drone is for missing persons. When we're searching for a missing person, time is critical, and we can cover a pretty big area very, very rapidly. And we can also search areas where you can't really get in there from the ground. We recently had a incident where a man was firing a weapon in his backyard, and police were called, and then he was not cooperative once police arrived. A drone would be a good tool in that situation because we could get eyes on scene, locate the person from a safer distance, and hopefully de-escalate the situation without having to be in close proximity to that person. And then drones provide visual feedback of incidents from a safe distance and give officers the options as they gather information in the hopes to resolve an incident without using force at all possible. So that's some of the reasons why we'd like to employ one of those.
Questions from the committee? Julia.
How long would you keep this, or you would need to replace the drone? Like, what's the timeline? Do you know?
keep it in what
Like,
manner?
yeah, like when would you have to like renew or get an upgrade or get a newer one? Like how long do you?
I've talked to other police departments where they've haven't really retired them. You need to replace parts of them. And then like I've talked to a few police departments that have started with the drone like we have, and it's kind of grown into a larger program. But I don't know if that would be the case here.
I would imagine too, it has to do with how many deployments you have, things wear out faster. Weather like Oregon probably would not be, you would probably have to replace it faster because the seals are going to be, worn out. And then you have water damage and things like that. So I don't really know that we would purchase it and know immediately in 3 years we need to replace it. But we would certainly keep that in mind and then try to budget for something like that in the future.
Other questions? Oh, well, that's the best part of the meeting.
No, I'm just gonna say, you said, now, if you get one, does that mean you're gonna want a whole fleet? And you're gonna start with like one
Yeah,
and
we'll
then you're
want
gonna want 12?
We'll absolutely want one on every car,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
every
thought.
traffic stop.
Actually, and not,
Hopefully we'll put our bloody worn camera on it.
yeah, oh, no. Not to be a wiseacre, actually had that kind of question, which is learning to use it and how you use it the best is probably you need a pilot. I don't mean a pilot to pilot it. I mean a program to try it out and figure out the policies and.
Yeah, you have to be a FAA certified pilot in order to run it.
So if we did this, then you would create a program where you, just like you're doing with the body cams, where you've got policies about how you use it, and then they would try it out and figure it out and,
Yes.
okay.
And we would have to follow state law. And of course, with government, it's much more restrictive. So, we wouldn't just be out flying it because we don't have anything to do that day. Honestly, it would be something we're lost and found, or lost and found. Search and rescue, it's not a wallet. Search and rescue, and then, high risk situations that we would deploy it. The situation that Dave talked about, we could have probably come to a conclusion a lot faster had we had a drone. I was not willing to put our officers in a situation to escalate the person's mental state and where they were at. When I say shots fired or, shot in the backyard, there was probably a volley of about 16 to 18 rounds that went up in the air that we don't know where they went. We were not able to pinpoint exactly where the person was. And it was several hours until we were actually able to find out who it was. But it would have saved us a lot of time, I think.
Got it, thank you. Anybody else? Solomon?
Just in terms of that added requirement of like somebody to fly the drone, is there somebody in the department who is already able to do that? Is that a new position that would need to be filled or training that's done?
Currently we don't have any pilots right now, but it's not like it's like an airplane pilot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would probably try to have somewhere between 3 to 6 trained people with a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week schedule. I think that, spreading those responsibilities out is probably what we need to do.
So that would be already people on the force getting trained to do that.
Yeah, it would just be another training.
Awesome.
Okay. Bryce, anybody, questions? I just want to make sure. I think we're good. Okay, thank you.
Good to see everybody in person.
Yeah, good to see you.
Oh, it's nice. Take a 5-minute break.
Pizza over here.
Cookies. Okay, there's a baby picture coming, I'm sure of it.
Baby's coming, not even a picture.
Oh. Yeah, yes, and you too.
I did not know they were weeping. I didn't know that they were weeping.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Yeah.
That's a good baby, Bryce, and a good big sibling.
Yeah, you a good big brother? Oh, you're talking to someone on the phone? Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Y'all that have two kids, I don't know how you do it. It's a thing. It's a whole thing.
One day at a time.
That absolutely is the truth. I'm just trying to survive each day. For sure. All right, I'll let
Right?
folks get to, yeah,
Blink twice and they'll be 30. Just telling you.
yeah, that's what I've heard as well. So it's trying to get through each day and stay as present as possible, for sure.
He's like, I can't keep my eyes open. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ian. I'm here as a representative of the IT department of the city of Newberg. I'd like to thank you for giving me this time to talk to you about two proposals I have. One of the things that Newberg has stressed over the years I've been here is that we need to be respectful of how we spend our money. We need to do more with less, and we have to try to make things stretch as much as we can. It's been something that we in the IT department have always tried to follow through on as best we can. A lot of our equipment, we keep running until it stops running. We keep in mind, safety and security as much as we can, but we don't upgrade for the sake of upgrading as much as we would maybe like to. This is very apparent with the computers that our staff use on a day-to-day basis. Back in 2013, 2014, we made the switch from very old desktop computers to, at the time, relatively modern virtual computers. We moved them to a system known as Citrix, where they have a relatively low-powered box on their desk that connects them to their high-powered desktop that runs in a server. It lets that computer system last longer because you don't have individual components that will fail, and it helped us get where we needed to be at the time. For the next year or two after that, as we figured out what parts are most important to the actual user, we did the upgrades we could, but the technology that they're using today is still from about 2016. And in a world where most of the things you do are paper-based and you're talking to your coworker and doing things slowly, that technology level does apply. But when COVID happened and we had to switch to remote work, that sort of changes the game. So when COVID happened, we had to figure out a way to let staff work remotely for basically no additional budget. And we were fortunate that virtual desktops kind of make that happen already. So a lot of our staff were able to figure out ways to kind of work remotely. But when you work remotely and you have to be paperless and you have to be networking with your colleagues and people from the community virtually, you need a computer that can handle it. So our long-suffering staff have been trying to make do with joining calls on their personal cell phone or on a secondary laptop setup, and they do their meeting on that, and they do their work in their finance software on the other screen. And they make it work as best they can, but when we have to send staff home for a quarantine, they are not as effective as they could be in a perfect world. So what I'm asking for is the funds to bring our system to the current day, basically replace that server core so that the technology that runs the desktops is today's technology. That would let staff actually use the laptop they have to do a video conference without having to keep two separate screens with two separate things going where they can't effectively work. This is going to let staff help the community better. They don't have to come into the office to do physical plans review quite as often if they can effectively do it remotely. And I think it would also help with employee retention. If employees who want to come work for the city know that you are not going to be forced to come in and work in an archaic fashion, you can actually use today's technology to work in what is becoming a remote workforce. We don't know when this is going to end, and I think our technology needs to keep up. So before I move on to the second ask, I'd love to entertain any questions.
Questions from the committee? Solomon.
just to clarify, so you would be upgrading what runs the virtual desktops?
Yes, this ask is actually to upgrade all the servers that run the virtual desktops, but also it's a small portion of this to upgrade the endpoints that are on the desks themselves.
Okay.
Because having the thin client does do some of the video processing. So having a thin client that is more powerful than another one does absolutely help. But our main bottleneck are the servers.
Or,
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Greg.
Is there any sort of replacement policy in the department? Is there any plan that ensures that this isn't, we fixed this problem, but we haven't actually fixed the problem?
Thank you. That's a great question. I have to say that there isn't a replacement plan in a way that I would like. The way replacements here in the city work are when a piece of technology infrastructure gets old enough that alarm bells start going off, the vendor won't support it without a more expensive warranty, or we actually see like hardware failures imminent, then we typically come in front of budget committee for a capital line item proposal and cross our fingers that it gets approved. One of the things that I've been discussing with Will is trying to figure out if there's a better way to do that, to pre-plan, that this piece of equipment, it's vital to your infrastructure. 5 years from now, you'll have to replace it. Why can't we have that discussion now? So that's definitely a direction we'd like to go. And modernizing what we have now will make that discussion much easier.
Elise?
Again, I think this is super healthy for us as a budget committee to all be doing together and prep for budget season next year. But we did talk about this I do support this, by the way. We did talk about last year in the budget, actually doing a line item for depreciation costs across the board for all technology. And that 100% needs, after hearing everything today, needs, in my opinion, to be added with a thoughtful plan for every set of technology upgrades that we're making so that you are upgrading and you're not upgrading when alarm bells go off. But I appreciate you helping me today. Thank you for your help. And I can totally see how this is supportive.
Any other questions? Our comments are available too.
I just want people to understand that it's not IT's fault that this has not happened. For 12 years or more, they have come to the budget committee and asked for a replacement plan or money in a budget for replacement. And it has never happened. And it has never been the fault of the IT, but it has always been the fault of the budget committee. I just wanted to make that clear that it's not their fault.
We have indeed heard this song before. And that's why earlier I said, we can't talk about the city needs to do this, it's us. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll go on to your second.
All right. So in addition to the actual technology you use, one of the most important things for an IT department is the security of that equipment. And I don't think there has been a time in history where it's been scarier from a cybersecurity perspective. If you follow tech news, this week has been one of the worst weeks for every company on earth, basically, because there's yet another exploit out there. This proposal has nothing to do with this week, but there's always a reminder that you can point to. One of the things that COVID has created is a much more diverse technological workforce, because people are using all sorts of different devices to connect to their desktops here. We try to put them on the same type of laptop, but that's not always possible. And now they have a laptop in their home, and it's difficult to ask somebody that is working remotely to come into the office on our time to update it, to keep it secure, to make sure that we check it on a regular basis. It still puts that burden on them to come in. And additionally, now you have all these additional areas where you could be vulnerable to any sort of attack. And every time security patch comes out, for us, it's largely a manual process to check every device, to check every server, to make sure that we are compliant. We use whatever tools we can to speed it up, but it is largely putting a body in front of that computer for sometimes days at a time to just go through and make sure we're compliant until tomorrow when there's another thing. So what I'm asking for is $40,000. It's not that slide, it's the next one. To let us purchase a Microsoft System Center, which is a tool Microsoft makes that helps you automate a lot of the patch delivery, deployment, and security checking of your servers and your endpoints. If
Okay,
there's any questions.
Questions from the committee? Crickets, all right. No, that
Thank you
means
very
did
much.
a good job. That's good. Thank you. Excellent. I was gonna say, you're not gonna have trouble making your steps today. Good. There she is. The hot seat's right over here.
Yep.
Not
Nope.
there. Who's working this line?
Hello, everyone. So I just launch?
Launch in.
Okay. I'm assuming that you all read the report. So I'll just quick, and I also gave a report on bird bucks back in October. And so really nothing has changed since then, but I will refresh your memory. The point of this is to keep spending local and to change the habits that got into place during the pandemic when all the local stores were closed and shopping and spending went online. And so now the idea is to use something that's called a closed loop system. I had a restaurant owner and a business person in Newberg reach out to me about this time last year saying we need what McMinnville has. They have a thing called MacBucks. And the idea was it would, a downtown gift card that only businesses that were part of the system could participate, and the money would go directly into their account in the same way that like a Visa card or a Visa gift card or a debit card, it's actually kind of like a debit card would do that. I investigated 2 companies. Well, first of all, I went online and contacted about 15 different downtown programs that had advertised that they have this type of thing. And I found out that there are only 2 companies that do this. One is an all online company called Hvhc, and the other one is this other one called Micronex or EML. And they're the only 2 that do these closed loop systems. They both cost about the same. And the reason why they're expensive, I contacted the bank, MetaBank, and got to talk to the person who actually runs their account. And the reason they're so expensive is it takes a lot of energy to do a closed loop system and do the accounting part of it. Very hands-on. So when I found out how much it was going to cost, our little organization does not have the budget for that. We're about a $60,000 a year budget. And we don't have any wiggle room when it comes to this. So I kind of put it on the back burner until Philip Higgins was meeting with Dan and had mentioned that I was talking about this, and Dan had been looking for a solution like this. So we met and talked about it, and he was interested in funding it and had mentioned that he was going to use ARPA funds for this. The problem is that we wanted it to be launched before the Black Friday, Shop Small Saturday, shopping time of the year. And so and it takes a while for everything to keep on moving through. This Micronex is from Scotland. And so they get printed there and sent, and they get sent here. So everything takes a lot longer. And as I said, there's only a couple of companies in the world that does this, and this was one of them. So we started the process. We got the money, the seed money for it, which was about $10,000. And then we were moving ahead, and all we needed was the signed contract, because we already paid for all the product up front, but the banks would not print until everybody who's named as part of the contract, which is including the city, signs the contract. Then they can't start printing the cards, and that happened probably about October. And then everything came to a stop, and with this until I came and presented to you here at this meeting. So that's kind of the background, so that probably wasn't included in the pitch. So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I guess, what companies, not necessarily all of them, but who in Newberg is doing this? How would people get on board late? Is that a possibility? Is it already set?
Well, we have to have the cards first, and then the people who are invited to join. In fact, I already did the invitation. We have about 11 people businesses who have signed up, including wineries and restaurants and stores. But what would happen is I would go out again personally and talk to everyone. It's a different type of process than it is with the regular kind of gift cards. If you go to Chapters and buy the gift card at Chapters, for example, they get the money right then. This is an opposite of this. It's just somebody gets the card, and where it's spent is who gets the money. And then it's also, the good thing about that is it gets tracked. But I didn't really, I don't know if I fully answered your question.
I guess, would there be a process where more than these 11 companies are going to be able to
absolutely.
come on? And then, I guess, out of curiosity, is it a situation where those companies would have to have a different POS system?
Nope. They just run a dollar through, and it records it, and then they are part of the closed loop system. Okay. We are hoping to have about 100 to 200 businesses as part of this. That would be our goal. A good amount of Newberg, not Dundee, and of Newberg would be participating in this.
All right, Polly, so I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it anyway. So this MOU that we've got in here has been sitting since October.
Correct. No, I worked on this. No, that is not true.
Okay.
We did not have an MOU, which is part of the problem. This MOU was crafted with, is there a date on it? It was crafted with Will and Shannon and I and Katie met, and virtually, and we crafted it together.
Okay.
Actually, they wrote it and then I approved it.
Okay, so for the 10,000 originally, was there a contract or MOU with that
No,
original 10,000?
there was not.
There was nothing.
It was just a verbal agreement.
Okay, and so this 18 was a part of the same verbal agreement then?
No, well, yes, I mean, there was the expectation, but the details were never fleshed out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I do want to comment too on the $10,000, the initial investment. That came out of the general fund money, not ARPA, since it had not had a chance to come to the committee.
Okay.
Julia?
I think you mentioned there are currently 11 businesses.
Yes.
How many out of those are minority owned?
Not Gonzalez, excuse me. The El Burrito is one of them. It's one of the minority owned businesses.
And that's the only one right now.
Correct.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Polly.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Not bad.
I do have one thing I want to add though, about that I initially, and I just want to amend this, but it'd be fine. Initially, I had asked for if you look on the budget, I had asked that the load fee would be paid by the customer, because I was looking for a very lean proposal. The card load fee is $1 per card for a customer who's trying to load it if they go through a physical load process here in Newberg. If they buy them online, there's no cost for that. And I would like to amend that and have the grant pay for the load feed, which would add an additional, and I wrote this down, and now I need to make sure that I have it in front of me. It's 6,000. Oh my gosh, where did I write that? Okay, I didn't write that down. I have the amended number, would the total be $24,325. So I would like that to be added to the record as an additional minute to that. Okay,
Everybody make a note. Awesome.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Last but never least.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll drink.
I know, we're just collecting them. Yeah. It's a speaker fee, you know.
I wanted to check that drink outside, but you wouldn't let me. Well, good evening, committee members. My name is Russ Thomas. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Newberg. And the proposal that I am putting forth tonight is for air purification systems and for the HVAC system replacement for City Hall. Starting with the Blue Zone air purification systems, you're sitting in a room that's protected by Blue Zone right now. The unit is sitting against the wall right over there with a little blue light on it. It provides a 99.999% kill of airborne viruses, bacteria, and germs. It's been recognized by the United States military as being completely effective. It uses UVC rays to do that with the air movement. And it runs continuously. It's capable of running continuously for 1 year. And at that time, we changed the light bulbs in it. We actually have 2 units, this one here, and that unit is sized actually a little bigger than this room would require. So what you're breathing right now is probably the most germ-free air inside a building in town. The second one is currently in the children's section at the library.
Nice. Well taught.
Yeah, yay. The original request to cover 14 units to be placed throughout the city buildings, that would be in City Hall, the Public Safety Building here, in the Records Building, at the Maintenance Offices, the Operations Buildings, Water and Wastewater, is to provide a germ-free, viral-free working atmosphere for city employees. They would be placed on the various levels and provide that. They have to work in conjunction with the current HVAC system that moves air. As many of you might be aware, OSHA requirements with COVID is that there is continuous air movement in all buildings that we have. This works in conjunction with that, and it's actually placed in the spot that has in this room that has the most air movement to provide that. And that's what's going to help allow the city to come back to hybrid meetings as well and provide that protection for the individuals that are here. Originally asked for the 45,000, I actually got a quote. The company that manufactures these is on Avery Street in Tualatin. And I've actually worked with them on getting a quote, and that should this be approved, we would pick them up for no shipping charge as well. The total cost of 14 of them is $42,158. They will run continuously for 1 year, and at that time, they just need light bulbs changed to provide that. The second component of that is the City Hall HVAC system. City Hall, as many of you might be aware, burned down back in the 90s. And at that time, it was completely reconstructed and 2 HVAC units were put on the roof, 2 25-ton units. Those are the original units that are still there today.
One unit has completely failed. And we've actually been fortunate in having our maintenance contractor, Alliant, come in and fix it to the point where it's fixed operation. It's not economical to run, but it's running and running continuously 24/7. There's no on-off switch. It's wired on. Baling wire and bubble gum. That's it. Basically what it's doing is providing heating and cooling, but there is no, as people have new heating systems, they start up and they shut down. They got an economizer on it. They are at 98% efficiency. These are at 0% efficiency right now, but they are moving the air as required by OSHA to keep a continuous airflow within the building. Should the units fail, the building will have to be evacuated and cannot be used as per OSHA regulations, because we will not have any air movement in that building. What we have done, and the other thing is we had it budgeted to look at getting these replaced. As everybody's aware, we've had issues with the supply system and increases across the board. Initially, we were looking at about $140,000 to replace both units. The cost to replace both units since the increases is $240,785, with another 10% increase coming January 1 of another $24,000. Rather than wait for that to happen, what we have done is we have expended the entire amount of our facilities reserve funds to get these going. We're 22 weeks out after we order these to get them. 22 weeks, so if you do the math, we're talking June to get them here with that. We had, as of November 15th, we had a balance of $258,872 in our reserves for facilities, maintenance, and repairs. We had committed $14,000 of that to other projects, and that's also has prior commitments. It's not accounted into this for repair of the atrium at the library. We've got, those are leaking. That's taken care of. With this expenditure, it leaves us a balance of $4,100 in our reserves for facilities and maintenance repair. We have plans for various things from replacing carpets to windows and that type of thing over the next couple of years. What this means is those are all getting put on hold for the next 2 years. And that basically minimal maintenance and repair of the city buildings and facilities, because we do have to keep City Hall occupiable and usable. So that action was taken. Should this be approved, those funds will be replenished, and those funds will be repurposed for the city facilities that we have, and that is maintaining City Hall, the Public Safety Building, the Records Building, which is where HR is, library, and portions of the Public Works buildings, which is a water and wastewater treatment plant. Utility funds take care of the majority of it, but these funds do help with some of the HVAC work that goes on within those buildings as well. So the original request was for $305,000, but with all of this, the actual request is for $282,943 for the total amount of the HVAC system and the 14 Blue Zone units for the city facilities. Questions?
Questions from the committee? Solomon.
What is the cost of replacing the bulbs?
For
Yeah, I'm just curious.
what, one bulb or there's actually 4 bulbs in there?
Per bulb.
The cost per bulb is about $85.
$1 million. Well, you never know.
And they have them in 12.
You buy the razor, but the blade costs. Yeah, okay. Other questions? Anybody? All right, I have a question, Russ. And it's, I think, was eloquently stated by about 3 people so far. The reserve fund, a plan for reserve fund. that takes care of major items like this is something that the budget committee needs to see. Because IT's got the same problem that you've got. You have money for carpets, but not for the HVAC system. Only, obviously you did, you took care of it and that's great, but future budget committee, we have to get on a road where we're replacing depreciating items.
There,
Just have
there
to.
is, I currently have, and there has been a 5-year rolling plan for facility maintenance and repair. And I will ensure that the budget committee this year sees a copy of that rolling 5-year plan.
Cool. Any other? All right, thank you very much, sir.
You are welcome. And I'm sure you're happy to see me
Always.
because I'm last.
Because you're the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice, huh? Nice. Yeah. That's it. We're not done, folks. So like, let's not celebrate too quickly because the issues raised earlier may come back to haunt us if they're real issues. So now we're gonna have to figure out how to vote. So they're handing out. Yes, so for the record, you have to put your name. Please don't use Ralph Nader or something that's, I mean, we had some interesting ones last time, but it was a dry run. Yes, I should get,
Lacey, can we get her?
I get to vote too. I don't just have to.
You need the chair to vote. No.
I'm sorry? I was right? Exactly. It could happen that that's a problem, but I think we have lots of good projects, so. The commitment, I talked to Will about this, so the commitment I'll make, if you guys are willing, we can look at more than 12 at a time, but it will take us to 9 o'clock to get through this after a long work day for most of you. So I'm willing to stay later in the future. If you want to have a longer list, I'm okay with that. But it's something we have to agree to do.
So the ones that don't, I know you already said this, but I just want to make sure, the ones that don't make it, now I can.
Yep.
They could come back.
They have to be able to come back. And I need to talk with Will about it because I want it to be fair. So.
There are some things on there that maybe like.
Yeah.
So we did want to allow the new projects to have a fair shake, all the ones coming in.
Oh, I agree.
The other ones could come back later.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we will.
That's right.
First, Survey Monkey has to download. Come on, baby. You can do it.
I know.
Okay.
There we go.
And they should come back with someone who can answer questions. By the way, please use your name. I'm serious about this part. Please use your name. We will be counting the number of votes and the names. This is public record, so don't mess around with it. No, we had people messing before.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you're voting for the thing you think you are.
And it's all over, I think it'll come up and it'll say, all money to library.
Then we'll know it was rigged.
Answers did not compute, library gets everything.
That's correct. So go for it. Okay, we will manually record yours, Greg, if there are not 8 worthy projects here. It's okay.
In that case, Greg, if we most time will not hit send.
I already did. Oh. It says, this is the tough one, you have to do 8, please approve 8.
Okay.
Oh, can I have a break vote?
Yeah, there we go.
I don't, I'm pretty sure. Hey, guys, we're not selling votes. Greg, please come over here. We'll have to manually add yours in. They will not be part of the tally that is shown, but we will manually add them in.
Greg, I thought that was going to be Katie, but I'm glad you took that.
Hey, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I think both in the packet and the presentation for the Berg bucks, it was approximately 18,000, whereas on the survey it was around 24. Not that it's a huge discrepancy, but just I think for our own purposes, I was wondering which number was more accurate.
I believe that the final number that Polly just told us was amended to be around 26,000.
26. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, 24. Will.
I'd like this noted into the record. Obviously, if anyone votes less than 8, then their votes in one sense carry more weight than everybody else's because they could statistically skew things, but that is people's right.
Well, I actually think we asked people to vote for 8 and Greg is abstaining from doing that. So that's okay. I want to count the however many votes you have made and we'll just go forward from this. Commit. We did commit. It's a part of it.
Okay, so once you're done, what do you do?
Hit submit.
I already did that. It says thank you.
And then it will have results.
As soon as everybody's done.
Are we, is that you and Ezekiel? You have the,
Not, once everybody's done.
Solomon, do you need help?
No, he's just thinking.
Oh, you're just thinking? Okay, all right.
So can I put that on where that? I'm done,
Yep.
right?
Your role is to go eat some more pizza, or we have cookies, or we have candy.
Yeah, do it.
Right. This is another, once you're done voting, there's another break to allow the folks to both sanity check and make sure that we have the right number of votes and also give us the totals. So.
You still have some of it.
Can I recruit the folks to come back to the meeting? Drum roll. All right, so technology being what it is, Ezekiel is about to wow us with a bar chart. So project 4 is the city financial software. Project 9 is upgrade city computers. Project 10 is the security software. And project 12 is the air purification unit. Those 4 clearly pass. You have the one that shows the number of votes as well. Can you do that? Because we had the 8 votes. No, over here. These all have 11 votes, which is a majority of the 14 members. So those are clearly okay. The next three are project one. Hey, guys. Guys, so we're going to go through it and answer the question for each one. So the top four have 11 votes. So those four pass with clearly a 11 vote yes, if we were going around and doing it. The fifth, sixth, and seventh, how many votes do they have?
I think 7.
7 or 8? It looks like there are 8 votes. And 8 is still a majority out of 14 people. And those are, the projects are the reduction of SDCs for the city of Newberg, the essential city staff payment, and the downtown gift card program. Which it's unclear now. And so what we will do for the 8th, to figure out the 8th one, is we'll give them a minute, they'll set it up, and you get to vote. How many votes do they get? They get one vote. They get one vote, and those 3 projects will be on it. Projects 5, 6, and 7 on your summary sheet. So 5 is the YCAP, 6 is the workstations, and 7 is the body worn camera. So give them a minute, they will get it set up, we can vote again. And this time, I will ask for a motion. Right. Yep.
Yep.
Hold the vote, so give them a second.
Hey, so, sorry if I missed this. The second vote, is this also happening via SurveyMonkey?
Yes, and we'll let you know. And the way we'll do that is we'll formally ask for a motion to do digital voting this time, which I forgot to do.
Okay.
And that's how you'll know the survey's ready. So hang in there while they build it. Okay, Bryce?
No worries. I'm assuming, is it the same link as the one before?
The 3 that are a tie for 8th place, which were projects 5, 6, and 7 on the summary sheet.
Mm-hmm.
That would be YCAP, the workstations for digital forensic, and the body worn camera.
Correct. Sorry, to clarify, the link to get to the survey.
Hang on just a second, Bryce. Guys, Rick and company, I can't hear Bryce, and we're still in motion, so hang in there with me. Bryce, your question again?
Yeah, it's more so about the link to get to the survey. Is it the same link? I know we're voting for 1 out of those next 3.
Right, it will be the same link.
Okay.
Just please wait till we formally turn it on. Okay.
Sounds
Did
great.
anyone else have questions? Sorry. I know we've all been looking at the data. Okay. Could I entertain a motion and a second to do a second round of digital voting, please? Thank you. Okay, you should be able to get to it, Bryce. No, I mean, he can get to it to vote. Oh, you have to vote. I thought you'd do it with your fingers. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, it passes.
My finger is up for the record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bryce. There it goes. Okay. Let's. No. I think. Yeah. I mean. Very good. Okay, can you?
We needed two of them to go through, right?
I think we just need
One.
one.
Just one, that would be 7 projects.
I thought there were 6 that were there and then there were 3.
No, we have 4, 3, and then 3. So we had 7, so you should just vote for one. Everybody done?
Yep, all right, let's see it.
Drum roll. No pressure, guys.
Project 5. So that's YCAP, right?
That is Whitecap. Okay. So, so could you put up, did you still keep we need to read out the list of projects that were approved. Got it? Okay. The ones with the stars. Okay. 1, not 2, essential workers. I'll read them out in just a second, guys. Not that. Not that. Where's the stuff? Having trouble getting her.
So you got.
These are pools,
So-
it's not there. Stars, okay.
So let's see. So
So that
yes,
one's
that one
done.
has, that one didn't. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. No, that was on the
No.
tie vote. That was on the
No,
tie vote.
no.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
And yes.
yes.
Okay. So just for the record, the projects that will be funded out of this budget meeting are project number 1, the SDC reduction for a new hotel. Project number 3, essential city staff member payment. Project number 4, new city financial software. Project number 5, programs for the homeless. Project number 9, upgrade city computers and technology. Number 10, increase technology security. Number 11, the downtown gift card program. And number 12, replacing the building fund that was used for the HVC and air purification units. So any further business? Not yet. Hold that thought. Any further business, folks? Because once they've said thank you and cleared out, I'd like to spend like 5 minutes on feedback. Because we're going to do this again and I want to improve it while it's still in your memory. Yeah, Will. Can we let them say thank you so they can clear out? Go ahead.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful. This is a great process. I just want to, from my perspective, thank you all so much. Thank you both.
Yep.
And on behalf of the city staff and city hall and the other building and the citizens buildings that we're gonna have to move.
Thanks, Russ. Okay, Will.
For the sake of the next meeting, I would like to see if we could possibly come to a decision on the number of items to be introduced in the evening. We moved a lot faster than we thought we would tonight.
Yep.
I would also like to formalize the voting procedure. In other words, if there'll be variant voting numbers, we have to develop a matrix for the backside to make the staff able to move a little bit more efficiently. And if that's the will of the committee, then we'll figure out a way. But thank you.
Okay, thanks. Will, Rick?
You know, again, I think just for the sake of the odds of the next group, I'd like to keep it to 12, because that way we've got a consistent process, and then anything afterwards, then we're good. Thanks.
Stephanie?
I hate to say this because I don't want to make the process any longer, but I do think it would be nice to have a discussion period after the presentations, before the voting, so that there are questions that maybe didn't come up, like things like, didn't we already okay body cams, so that we can clarify? That would help, I think. Like, are we gonna get the funds from somewhere else if we don't vote for it here, particularly for the city things, because that belongs to us. It's a little different for the outside
Makes
entities,
sense.
but
Yeah. I think that's a good ad. Rick? This is really great because you
No,
have to
if I
really
could-
want to talk. to
Yeah,
get up.
no, if I could just follow on to that same idea, I think particularly, I think we should be taking notes, because a lot of us said we thought we already did body cameras, but if there's things that we like, drones, body cameras, et cetera, that we keep it in the budget for the next cycle.
Oh,
Thanks.
Anything? Great.
Hey, I had a quick question about process.
Yes, Bryce.
Yeah, what happens if, and I'm sure the next 12 are going to be phenomenal as well. But if, let's say, out of those 12, I really like 6 of them, but there were 2 that are from this session that I like more than the other, 6 from the other. How will that work?
So one of the things that I told Will is that we need to allow projects that did not get funded, because we limit the amount we do each time, to come back, so that you have that opportunity to look at the whole picture. We can't invite people in today who haven't submitted anything yet. All we can do is review what we have, but once we have something, to lock it out doesn't seem fair. So I'm going to talk with Will about how we do that. It doesn't necessarily have to add to the length of the meeting, because you have heard about
Right.
it already.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
we'll work on that, because I think that's a weakness in our process too, Bryce.
Yep. One thing I would propose is, if we stick with the same survey process, we keep the ones that did not get voted through tonight, we just keep those as part of the survey to consider with the other 12 potentially.
That may be what we do. Give us a chance to work on it, because we want to be fair to the new 12 as well.
I trust your judgment.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Having a minimum number of projects that we have to approve means that you may have to approve a project that you don't agree should be approved. So another alternative way to do that would be just to not have any minimum number of approvals that a committee member could have, and then just look for which projects do have garnered a majority vote. If you have a sort of internal cap, we're going to do no more than 8, and you had 8 projects that got a majority vote, that would be the number selected. And if you needed to prioritize, it would be the ones obviously that got the most votes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Feedback on the process? Okay, I want to give kudos to Will and Katie, because I have seen budget committee try to make decisions before on a lot less money and never do it. And I have sat in county commissioners where they cannot move the needle on giving that money away. So I'm very proud of us tonight, guys. We took, oh, totally. No, but think about it. Because of what we're doing tonight, the computers are going to get upgraded. There's going to be HVAC. I mean, this is real stuff. We're not throwing money away on stuff that doesn't matter. So I'm very proud of us. Yes. So more to come. Thank you very much. And we're done before 9. Yes. Meeting is closed. There. Did I do it?
Bye, everyone.